Hey, this is Dan from LearningCameras.com, and here we have the Canon SL1 camera. Now, this is Canon's brand new small DSLR, much smaller even than the Canon T5i or T4i. So this is what Canon claims is the smallest DSLR available right now. So, and putting this in your hand, you can definitely notice a difference. It is much smaller, much more compact, much lighter. Now, we are pairing this with this test for the Canon 40mm f2.8 Pancake lens. This would be a must-have lens at under $200 for this camera. I wouldn't buy this camera without this lens, and the reason is very simple. The profile is so small in this camera that this is the only lens that's really going to maximize that small profile and get you the results you're looking for in a small and light body. And also at f2.8, that's not bad at all. It's pretty wide open, and so this will make an excellent prime lens. It's also pretty sharp for a cheap lens like that. So the results have been fairly good, and at f2.8, it's fairly wide, much wider than we're going to get with a kit lens on that. Overall, really, there's nothing bad about this camera in terms of comparison with the T5i. We're not really missing out on much. You do lose the articulating screen. You do lose some of the buttons on the back of the camera, but those are replaced via the touchscreen, so you really don't need those if you don't mind using the touchscreen on that. Other than that, you're really not missing out on a whole lot of functionality on this camera versus a Canon T5i. We are going to slow down from a 5 frame per second to 4 frame per second shooting. That's hardly going to be noticeable for most of your shots. So let's take a look at the quality of this camera and see how it compares. Now, when it comes to straight image quality for the SL1, everything looks really on par with what we've seen from Canon DSLRs, especially their entry-level DSLRs in the past. That's both good and bad. It's good to see that we're getting that kind of quality out of a small body. So for people who might have looked at other small bodies are now going to get DSLR style quality in a camera that's not very large. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Canon has made any new ground on sensor technology on that. And we're really seeing quite typically the typical results that we're used to seeing on Canon entry-level DSLRs. Now, this is even more noticeable when it comes to the noise test. At 1600 ISO, definitely the struggle area for Canon has in the past been the shadow noise, and this Canon is no exception. We're definitely seeing noise crop up at 1600 ISO, especially in those shadow areas, increasing that to 3200. You know, we can't see a huge difference when zoomed back out, but when we zoom in, we tend to see that it is worse. At 6400 ISO, things start getting really bad, especially in those shadow areas where we're seeing a huge amount of noise. And at 12,800 ISO, the results are really unusable for this camera, no matter how you're shooting this. And so I did want to check and verify that we are getting those typical results from the Canon 70. I wanted to put it side by side with the 70 just to see if Canon has made any new progress on these sensors, and it doesn't appear that Canon has, because at 1600 ISO the shadows are definitely noisier in the SL1 than they are in the Canon 7D. You know, the results do look a little bit sharper, but we're definitely not seeing anything better on those shadow areas. At 3200 ISO, same thing, same noise in the shadow areas, and at 6400 ISO, the results even seem more noticeable. Definitely a better picture on the Canon 7D than the SL1, so we're not seeing any increase in performance. And just to show you guys what I'm talking about, here's the Nikon D7100 up against the SL1. Now, the lenses are different, so don't look at the sharpness, but you can see that the low light results in the shadow areas in Nikon is much cleaner than we're seeing in the Canon. All the way up at 3200 ISO and all the way up to 6400 ISO, the Nikon definitely looks much better. When it comes to video mode on the Canon SL1, we do have all of the video things that we would expect on this camera. The same stuff from the Canon T5i is going to be on this camera. We also have complete AF. It's not too bad. It's not the greatest. It does search a little bit, not quite as good as what I've seen on the Nikon cameras, but it's definitely a step up, and one of the first cameras to have basically live AF in video mode other than the T4i, which started it. So Canon is definitely upping its game a little bit on the autofocus, and you do have full 1080p at 30 frames per second, so that's great to see on that. We don't have a lot of the manual options on audio. You can, it does have a mic input though, so we are able to actually put a mic inside of that. Now, overall, the quality was very good. I was very happy with the results. Nothing revolutionary. And when we take a look at the low light results, though, this is where it begins to fall apart. At 3200 ISO, this is really unusable. And even a 1600 ISO, I just wasn't very happy with the results. But at 3200 ISO, I definitely wouldn't say that this is a very usable camera. So you're going to want this in a good light only. Not going to be the best for video in low light. So overall, it's not that the Canon SL1 is a bad camera. It's up to par with what we've seen from Canon in the past. It's that there's nothing really new and revolutionary about this that I was able to notice, especially when it comes to image quality, other than the size and compact nature of the camera, especially when compared with this 40mm f2.8 Pancake lens. So you're going to get the smaller body. It is a little bit cheaper than what we see right now on the Canon T5i, $100 cheaper. Would I buy this camera? You know, if you're looking for the Canon T5i and want something small, I would definitely go for this. You're going to save $100. There really is no downside to using it other than the articulating screen, which unless you were going to do solid video at weird angles, you're not really going to see the results much better on having that screen. I didn't mind using this at all, and you're going to save yourself $100, and it really is not any worse than the Canon T5i and what we've seen in the past from Canon. The downside is that this is not a step up in camera. So if you have the T4i, if you were looking at the T5i and wanted something better, definitely don't look at the Canon SL1. It's not going to be a step up. Even if you have the Canon T3i, you're really not going to want to move to the SL1 except for that compact size. That's going to be the unfortunate part of this camera. But I want you to head to the website, LearningCameras.com, because we're going to put the raw files from this, so you're going to actually be able to take those, hit them up in a Lightroom, see the results yourself, and see if you like the results in compared to what you've been getting on those other cameras. But for me, the results are really not better. So if you're in the boat where you're looking for a nice compact DSLR, the Canon SL1 is really the only one that's going to get you that small size with still good quality. But if you have any of the past Canon cameras, I'd probably wait a generation to see if Canon can improve their technology before jumping on the boat, selling your old gear, and buying something new. Otherwise, you're going to want to upgrade to the next tier, and it looks like Canon might have some cameras on the horizon. So subscribe, and we'll keep you updated on future reviews, future cameras that come along. And once again, hit up that website, and we're going to take a look at those files. We have a page on Google Plus too, so feel free to join in the conversation on what you see on the results of this camera and what you would like to see from Canon in the future.